What is the best Golf GTI? So this is a bit of a rating I'm going to go through, similar to a video that I did around with the Golf R. And this is all the way through from the Mark 1, which you can see here, all the way through to the current latest 2020 Mark 8. So this is all the GTIs that I can go through. Now I know there were a lot of sort of like special editions, some that I particularly love, like you've obviously got like the 40th edition, 45 edition, Club Sport S's, 35 editions, all sorts of stuff. But I'm going to try and take each sort of division as its own, so like a collective effort between the lot, really, starting from the Mark 1. So let's go through some of the pictures. So obviously you've got a nice Mark 1 here, kind of the car that allegedly started the whole hot hatch kind of theme. You could take your family in it, that kind of thing. So obviously very iconic car. But let's go through some of these pictures. You've then got the Mark 2, which is obviously an evolution of the Mark 1, pretty simple and straightforward. The Mark 3, not 100% sure on those looks personally, but yeah, this was another iteration as the Golf GTI sort of became a little bit more modern. The Mark 4, this is the car where in this generation the R sort of 32 was sort of created as well, so that's why I kind of discussed that in the previous Golf R rating. But yeah, as you can see, this is that's what it looks like, the Mark 4. Mark 5, this is what really kind of again took my breath away in terms of the GTI. Something that I like a lot, and I think a lot of enthusiasts admire too. You've then got the Mark 6 shown here, essentially very much an improvement over the Mark 5, but not a massive improvement. I was also told as well that the Mark 6s were quite expensive as well, which is why they kind of dropped off the radar a little bit potentially for some enthusiasts. We then go through to the Mark 7. I've already said that this generation was sort of epic for the Golf R. Yeah, I love it, and I was very torn between a GTI and an R when I was trying to get my car. In the end, it came down to price and the fact that the R's worked out pretty much cheaper somehow than the GTIs. But yeah, hugely important car, more in keeping with my kind of generation as well. Generally the cars from sort of like the Mark 4 and above were the ones that kind of took my notice a little bit more. And the final car, the latest Mark 8, which is obviously was released last year. I'm filming this on the 10th of September 2021. I have driven some iterations of the Mark 8 GTI, including the Club Sport as the main one, and I have driven the R as well, but trying to think on the GTI theme as well. And if you enjoy the content that I kind of produce, drop me a message on Instagram if you have any one of these cars. It'd be fantastic to get them in the channel, particularly the more modern stuff. That's kind of what I'm more into, if I'm honest. But yeah, let's go through and yeah, let's rate these cars. So as before, you've got all the generations of the GTI sort of shown here. Mark 1 there, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, Mark 5, Mark 6, Mark 7, Mark 8. They've done a good job, haven't they, VW? Essentially, I'm going to just rank these from epic being as the best, really iconic, couldn't really do no wrong, to fail as in a bit of a flop. And obviously this is all in my opinion. I'd like to get more experience to drive more of these cars. That's certainly a big part of the channel, but also get involved in the comments, because I'm really interested to know your feedback and your comments, because that will influence once I come back to this in time, maybe potentially next month, and to do a bit of a rating. So if you comment and say, I've got a Mark 3 and actually Sam, it's really good because of XYZ, that will influence the way that I kind of rate it. So it's very much a community channel to get involved. And to kind of reiterate that, I've asked you guys the same question. This is a post that's scheduled to go live soon, which means it will be live for you when this video goes live, and it's just which is the best Golf of all time. Now I can only add 5 options because that's all YouTube allows me to, so I've just done Mark 1, 5, 6, 7 and 8. So vote for that and make sure you get involved in this community channel of mine. But yeah, let's go through and get on with this and start ranking these cars. Now I'm going to be quite I suppose brutal in some ways, because a lot of these cars I don't have as much experience about, simply because I'm more of a 90s person and above. Obviously that being more in my sort of age bracket. But let's just start with the iconic Mark 1. It started everything. It's kind of, obviously the GTI's kind of been made into, well, for me, the R, which is a big car that I talk about as well, and obviously the GTI in its own right. And it all came about from this. But nonetheless, the Mark 1 really took normal, hard-working families and put it to the scene. Sort of mid-70s, so it's been around a long time now, the GTI. You're talking 45 years now. And this is the car that started it all. So straight away, I've got to say it's epic. it's a big part of my channel, and the Mark 1 was the reason where it all started. And if you do have one or anything, again, please comment if you have any one of these cars. It'd be really interesting to know. Now we get on, let's not do it exactly from 1 through till 8. Let's sort of skip a few. Let's go for the Mark 4. The Mark 4 is it's certainly a car that I recognised on the road, if that makes sense. But it certainly wasn't something that really blew me away. I didn't necessarily think it was particularly that fast. Similar to the R32, I always felt like the Mark 4 Golf was building up to something special, i.e. the Mark 5. And as a result, it's sort of like it didn't really capture the emotions for me. So the Mark 4 I'm going to put into meh. And again, if you guys disagree or you have any comments, please do let me know. I will read them all, and that will take my influence. Obviously, not having driven these cars, some of these cars, I can only say so much from what my personal opinion is, but very interested to know about the community. Now, just on looks alone, if we go for the Mark III, I don't think that was a particularly good car. That's just my opinion. I don't think it looked good. It's certainly the worst looking car out of all of these ones here. And I could be quite harsh here and put it in bad, but without driving it, I'm not too sure. So it's going to go somewhere in the middle between meh and bad, I would say, for the Mark III. Let's move some of these out of the way to make it a little bit clearer. While I've clicked on that, let's go on to the Mark VI. So this was very much a sort of like a refresh of what was a brilliant Mark V. A car that's still pretty modern today, even in 2021, it's sort of around from 2009 through till 2012. Again, in 3-door, manual, DSG, it kind of had it all, subtle looks. I really like the Mark VI, really like them. I arguably like them even more because it's just that little bit more rarer and maybe even a little bit more subtler than some of the other cars. It's not talked about as much. I really do think that was a good car, and that's where it's going to go. It's a very good car, and that's where it's going to sit right there. That's what I think. Let's skip to the next oldest one, which is the Mark II. I think it's easy for sort of people to say, the Mark 1 is where it's at. But to keep a model going takes a lot of guts, takes a lot of influence from Volkswagen to be able to justify this sort of like huge financial backing to keep it going. So fair play. The Mark II sort of kept things going from what was a great Mark 1. They obviously built on that success and they were trying to find something. I also think it looks better than the Mark III, and I think because of that, it's definitely... let's think, probably obviously not as iconic as you would think for in comparison to like the Mark 1, but I think certainly it kept things going, whereas the Mark III, I don't necessarily like the looks, if I'm perfectly honest. So yeah, it's certainly you know what, it's going to go into okay. You know what, let's move up a little bit more between okay and good. See, I'm kind of winging my rating list, and again, these can change over time, so it'd be interesting to see where things sort of fall into place. But yeah, let's stick it there because that's where I think it is. For me, not as good as the Mark VI, just because I really like the Mark VI. That's just my opinion. So we go into the more modern stuff, as you can see here with these three cars. There's the Mark 8, if you couldn't tell, all in white, actually, funny enough. One of my favourite cars, I'll have to get straight into it, is the Mark 7, and I talk about it so much. I struggled so much deciding between a Mark 7 and a Mark 7 GTI and a Mark 7R. The only thing that put me off was price, and I think that does slightly let down the Mark 7, whereas you look at the Mark 1, it was obviously priced at a position where they didn't know what it was going to do, so it was priced for people to be able to afford them. The Mark 7 GTI, I think it's virtually epic. I would want to get more time in Mark 7 GTIs actually to be able to give it any more, but for me, I just love it. There's nothing I really don't love about it, apart from the fact that I haven't had much time to drive them. I am hopefully driving a Club Sport S next month from an owner, which I'm really looking forward to, and if that goes well, because that's one of my favourite Mark 7s, this will be just that little bit further up the list to a full-on epic car for me. So stay tuned, subscribe, check out my channel as well if you like it and sort of content that I do. So we've got the last two, and I probably have left the best two till last to a point. But let's start with the most modern one, the Mark 8. It's been out the longest from the Mark 8 sort of hot hatch type of cars, and if you include everything, so the 45th edition, the Club Sport, which I've spent a lot of time in, the Mark 8 Club Sport, and just the Bogo standard Mark 8, I really like it. I like how you can still get it in a manual. I like how it's still priced just about okay. In the UK, you can kind of get them from around 33,000 from new. Then with discounts, you can get it a little bit lower, potentially once the market sorts itself out. I think they did a great job, and they really sort of, stepped it up or tried to improve upon what was already such a great platform in the Mark 7. Similar to what I said a little bit about the Mark 7, I mean, I've driven this car a fair bit. I would like to drive the standard car to really get a full impression of it, but for me it's a great car, and that's where I feel it deserves to be at the moment. And again, all these cars I do like. Maybe not potentially the Mark 3. I don't like the looks of that. That's just my opinion. But it's, yeah, that's where I'm at. And again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. The final car, the Mark 5, I really like this car, and a lot of enthusiasts like this car. It reminds me of a lot of when Top Gear was kind of about. It was a car I saw on the road a lot. It was kind of competing with, it was in the mark of when the Civic Type R was kind of dominating a little bit in the hot hatch scene around that era, and it kind of pushed like the Mark 4 out of picture, and a car that I loved with that VTEC engine. Really, really cool little hot hatch, and a proper like race sort of chassis setup to a point. Yeah, fantastic from them. But the Mark 5, yeah, I love it. Again, a car I hope to drive at some point, and I hope to get it on the channel at some point too. Because I haven't driven it, that's what stops me from going sort of full on epic, but it's certainly way up here. And as you can see, I'm a bit of a VW fan these days, particularly with the GTIs, because a lot of these are by the top. But yeah, that's my list. Things may change. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you guys think. But yeah, there you go. Epic for the Mark 1, almost epic for the Mark 7, great for the Mark 8, almost epic for the Mark 5, good for the Mark 6, between good and okay for the Mark 2, meh for the Mark 4, and between meh and bad for the Mark 3. Those are my ratings. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please subscribe, get involved. It's a community channel, it's a friendly channel. I try to help other owners out. I try to build a bit of building up the ownership for a lot of cars. I've spoken a lot about my Mark 7 sort of Golf throughout my channel, as well as documenting a lot about the Mark 8. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments, because I really, really do take your opinions on, and I like to share them in videos as well, because that's what it's all about. That's what my channel's all about. It's the community. It's why I do YouTube personally. That's the only reason. But thank you so much for watching. Thoughts as always welcome in the comments, and I'll see you again next time. Cheers guys.